Welcome to Retrained Search, the podcast, where we lift the lid on what it's really like to work retained, discuss the stories we've gathered along the way, and give you all a peek behind the scenes of our amazing community and how they're getting ahead. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Retained Search show. I'm very excited today to be joined by James Ward, who it's been a really long time since I last saw you and spoke to you.
Yeah.
And although we've had a bit of a catch up, we haven't talked about business at all. So I'm really
Yeah.
interested to know what's going on.
Yeah.
And there's a reason that we've decided to invite James on to talk to you all. And it's because he comes at this from quite a unique angle. So James, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah. So my name's James Ward. I own and run a business called Clarity R2R. We're based here in Miami in the US. I've had the business 19 years. We're a leadership focused recruitment to recruitment firm, obviously from the UK. Spent whatever 14 years or whatever it is in the UK. Worked UK markets, but then started transitioning more to US markets probably about 10 years ago, and that driven a move that we was planning personally to come out here. And then yeah, came out here 4 years ago, me and my wife, and yeah, came out here and yeah, settled here now and growing the business. There's three of us now. And yeah.
And tell us about who you serve, James, and how.
Yeah, so in terms of markets, I mean, and I suppose leveling, predominantly technology, although we're doing an increasing amount more work in life sciences. We've just hired a guy who is focused on financial services,
Mm,
all leadership level. So essentially from billing manager, AVP level through to board level is kind of where we do outbound searches and essentially roles that we work.
mm,
Um, do we place principal consultants and people in more of an individual contributor sort of role? Absolutely. We just don't work
mm,
on those roles. So we get a lot
mm.
of those via referral and that kind of thing. But if it's a strategic hire, a specific gap or something senior leadership level, that's a role that we would work.
And
And
they're
that sort of focus our efforts.
for recruitment firms.
For recruitment firms.
Mm,
So technology, life sciences, and finance staffing firms across the US. It has predominantly been UK firms that are in the US. But we are doing more and more work now in the traditional, I suppose, US staffing market. So I'm
mm.
not saying we're turning our back on the UK crowd, but in terms of the level that we operate at and are wanting to continue at, and even go north in terms of level, more board work and so on. There's more of that in the US staffing space than what there is with UK owned firms that are in the US.
What's the size of the market like for recruitment businesses versus in the US versus in the UK?
Well, it's an interesting one. I mean, in terms of, and there's these stats around, isn't there, about kind of like, the amount of staffing firms in the US versus the UK. And I
Mm.
think there's like 40,000
Isn't it about the
staffing.
same? Yeah.
No, it's less. So I think
Oh, is
it's like,
it
they
less?
say, they say, over, and this is across all markets, that there's about 40,000 in the UK and there's about 65 million people in the UK or whatever. But
Right.
there's 25,000 in the US and there's 350
Wow.
million people in the US. So in terms of the saturation and the size of market, it's like it's chalk and cheese.
Wow.
So, and this is the thing, is the fact that again, just because we're from the UK and we have a really strong UK network and so on, that pool is still is actually pretty small in terms of UK firms that are in the US, and there's a big, huge market out there that we do some work, but we don't do enough, in my opinion, compared to the UK comparatively speaking, because
Interesting. That's so
yeah,
interesting. So does it mean that there's basically more market to get in the US then from a,
I mean,
is it?
it's huge. I mean, it's so vast.
Wow.
And that's it, and
Never
if
thought of it like
anything.
that.
Yeah, it's so vast. I mean, R2R isn't as much of a thing out in the US as it is in the UK. But for me, that represents, more opportunity and
Right.
whatnot. So
Mm,
so yeah, in terms of the market
yeah.
size, it's wild. We're in Miami. I mean, we work UK wide. That's a UK wide. We work US wide. But I mean, that arguably, should we have done that maybe just East Coast initially or whatever? But just
Mm,
based on network, we started doing work all over the place.
mm.
So yeah, it's huge. Yeah, it's huge, and we've not even scratched the scratch of the surface, to be fair, in terms of what we're doing. There's only three of us anyway at the moment, so yeah, huge amounts to go at.
Where you say that the US market is not as established from a rec to rec perspective
Yeah.
either. When and how did you get into rec to rec? Was that where you started, or did you move from recruitment into recruitment to recruitment?
Yeah, so I started in recruitment 25 years ago. So I started at S3, as many people do,
Yeah.
at S3. So I had 6 years there. I started in Manchester, had 3 years there doing tech contract,
Mm,
and did reasonably well. And then I was tapped on the shoulder to go over to Leeds. Leeds had a team at the time that wasn't doing brilliantly well, and they needed someone to help, rebuild it and whatnot. Myself and another guy, Ben Broughton, who you may know,
mm,
went over there to kind of rebuild it. Ben went down to Reading. I stayed in Leeds and then managed that team for 3 years. And then, yeah, after 3 years, I was like, I think I want to do something on my own. It wasn't going in the direction that I wanted it to go in terms of my career and whatnot. So I was like, do you know what? I think I just want to do my own thing. So yeah, from that point, went into R2R. I mean, the reason that I went into that rather than staying in tech contract was, first of all, I hadn't been on the phone in three
mm,
years. I've been doing a non-billing management role. Um, so obviously I didn't have an established network.
mm,
I couldn't plug
mm.
into, anything. I knew that it was going to take a while to build it up. Financially, I wasn't really in a position where, I could.
Are you enjoying this so far? Don't miss a single episode. Hit the subscribe button right now so you can be part of the conversation that's shaping the future of recruitment. So we dive really deep into the strategies, the stories, and the truth about retained search. So if you want to hear more about it, or you know someone else that needs to hear this, then share it with them. Right, let's get back to the good stuff.
you know, basically sit on my hands for, 6 to 9 months while building a tech contract business or a tech business or tech recruitment business. So I was like, do you know what? There's probably a bit of a gap in the market for people or a business that's led by someone with my sort of experience, because I've been on the
Mm,
candidate side, I've been on the client side, I've been hiring people and all the rest of it. So I was like, do you know
mm,
what? There's probably a gap really for someone who knows what they're doing in that
mm.
market, because my experience of rec to rec firms in the job I was doing was pretty poor.
Yeah.
So I was like, do you know what? I've got an established network and I can just plug into that pretty easily and start doing my own thing
Mm,
and have a bit of a lifestyle business, and we'll
mm.
see where it goes. So straight away I was able to supply back into the business that I just left.
Yeah, yeah, I did that.
Yeah, and then yeah, of course, people, peers, and whatever that have gone
Mm,
off to other businesses and set up on their own, started plugging into that, and yeah, I was away. So I kept it pretty small. I did hire a couple of people at first, weren't the right people, and then I was like, right, I'm just going to keep this sort of lean. I wasn't really interested in growing anything in the UK
mm,
until, like I say, the US thing started,
mm.
becoming clear, and then it
How
was
did
like.
that happen? How did the US thing happen?
It was
Do you
mainly
remember?
driven by, I mean, I always had, I've always been interested in moving out here and doing the
Mm,
US lifestyle thing. And we used to come on holiday, obviously, to the US. We used to come to New York all the time and Vegas and, all that kind of stuff. So it was always like, yeah, that's a bit, like, that's a bit of me. That was a lifestyle that I
mm,
want to try. But then that was around the time that a lot of UK firms were first really starting to expand out to the US. So obviously you had the likes of Michael Page and S3
mm,
that were here, early 2000s or whatever. But then there was this wave of UK firms, probably 15 years ago now, to be fair, that were starting to expand out to the US, the Fadens, FRGs,
yeah.
some of these sorts of, LHIs, these sorts of firms were starting to expand. So I started supporting some of them with regards to, staffing out there
Mm,
and, relocations from the UK. And then it
mm,
was like, okay, this is starting to become commercially probably viable from my point of view in the future. My wife at the time also had a recruitment business. She did an MBO with it in 2021. So at the time, we was thinking, okay, we're going to go basically on my wife's. visa and she's going to set up out there, or we're going to do it, via me. And yeah, she did an MBO with the business, and yeah, it become clear that I was going to, support the visa process and everything else, and then essentially start growing a business out here. And also as well, it started becoming to the point where, in the future, I wanted my role to change. I had a lifestyle business, was doing okay out of it, but you know, 48 now, so I was like, do you know what? I don't want to work on my own forever. I want to try and build something and build a DNA and a culture and work with great people. And I also think that commercially there's a huge opportunity out in the US as well.
Mm.
So it
Tell us a
was,
bit about that then. You've touched on it a couple of times. The when you were at S3, the rhetoric experience you had as a customer
yeah,
wasn't particularly good.
yeah,
And then, when you established your business, you were, looking to plug that gap. And then you just
yeah.
touched on it again there that you want to grow a culture and a DNA. What is it that makes you different in what you do to the others?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's, without, yes, one of our core values is humility. So it sounds like I'm tooting my own horn a little bit. But I think my experience level, obviously, and I think the way that we approach the market, the way we train the guys here in terms of how I think it's a little different. And is it more advanced? I mean, look, we're not reinventing the wheel here. Recruitment's recruitment to a degree, and I think the basics of it stand across many decent performing recruitment businesses that you'll speak to. But I suppose what makes us different is, yeah, probably the way that we approach it, my experience level. Um,
Mm.
yeah, I haven't given you a
What?
very good answer there, have I?
Well, I'm just curious, because I know that you are consistently highly recommended. I recommend people to
Yeah.
you all the time, and quite often
Yeah.
they come back to me to say he's too busy. So I know that you're doing something right. I was just curious to know what it was. Tell me a bit about, any kind of pivotal moments or kind of turning points in your journey in the business.
Overall, or in the US, or
Well, either. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there was a couple of points I mentioned before. I had a few people when I first set up, and that just didn't work out. And I hired the wrong people, and it was like, do you know what?
Interestingly, seeing as you're the recruiter for recruiters,
Yeah, yeah. And I was a lot younger at the
cobbler's
time.
shoes and all that.
Yeah, I did it when, and I'll tell you about another point when I first came out here. I had a couple of wrong people, you
Mm,
know, um, there weren't values aligned or whatever, and it just didn't, it just didn't work out, and that's fine. It was my decision. I hired them, so it's all down to me,
yeah.
sort of thing. So I suppose that was pivotal in the fact that okay, I'm gonna keep this small, and I'm just gonna keep it small, work on my own, essentially have a decent performing lifestyle business, had a good life, had a nice place and whatnot, and was earning all right, but it wasn't it. I can't say that it was hugely satisfying from a
Right.
sort of uh from a purpose point of view. It
Mm,
was like I'm just doing this to make money, and
mm,
it's fine, but wasn't really sort of feeding my soul with regards to like building something and you
mm,
know, and being excited about having clear purpose.
mm,
No, in truth. And dare I say, for a period in my 30s there, I wasn't really performing at the level that I could have performed at just because it was a means to an end. I was just doing it for the sake of doing
mm.
it.
Yeah.
So I suppose that was a pivotal sort of
Okay.
moment. And then,
Yeah,
of
good.
course, when the US came into view, that was like, okay, this is something we can, this is, I have got clear purpose here, with regards to what we want to do with it and, everything else. That was around the time that we started speaking,
Mm,
and did the course and whatever.
mm,
And that was like, right, okay, if I'm going to move to the US, I need to probably change the model and I need to reposition what it is that we do and, have a bit more of a clearer strategy because just placing, candidates with clients who aren't that committed is fine if you sat on your own, but if we're going to go out to the US and all the operating costs associated with the US and everything else, it's like, okay, maybe we need to reposition what we're doing, the role levels, how we approach it, all that kind of stuff. So I suppose that was another pivotal moment. And then, yeah, when I first got here, I made another couple of hiring mistakes. When I got here, I was like, right, okay, we've been doing all right, been doing all this retained work, and we've got some money in my pocket. Let's just hire people. And I got that wrong as well. So it wasn't long. I had a couple of people. I had an operations person, shouldn't have done that. Should have, just hired a VA and I hired because I was drowning in admin at the time, and I hired a consultant, wasn't the right person, and yeah, then it was like, okay, let's just calm down here. Started working with, a management coach, Nick Booth, who you may know. He would talk a lot about the values. What values you have, what values you want in the business, what values you want the people who you hire to have, because that's the foundation for everything. That was
Mm,
pivotal actually as well.
mm,
It's
mm.
like that's the foundation upon which you build a
Great
house,
advice.
essentially. So if you
Yep.
just hiring people who can build money, you'll always, and they're completely different to you, you will always have problems. So values is the first thing, and we was like super clear about all that,
Mm,
and that was a pivotal moment as well. And then I
good.
suppose when we've hired, the guys, thankfully, touch wood, we're going good.
Third time lucky. Yeah, good.
Yeah, without, yeah, yeah. So I think it's just that, I think it's just what a lot of people, they come out here, they are, they get some, make a couple of mistakes, and then
Yeah.
you find your way,
I think it's the same with everything, as well as not just hiring, but finding out what it is the basis of your business. The values piece and the purpose piece. I discovered that probably a year after I needed it, and so
Yeah,
we're all just learning, aren't we? And I like
yeah,
understanding how other people have been on that journey. Tell me then, you mentioned that transition for you, then that move to retained. It was important
yeah,
to you for various reasons, one of which because I remember the conversation, you needing that stability in the business, being supporting that move. What is your take then on the contingent model versus retained in the rec to rec market?
yeah. It's an interesting question because, of course, rec to rec is considered quite rightly, 'cause as it is most of the time, candidate driven. So
Mm,
should you be offering a retained solution for a market which is candidate driven when you can get candidates 6 or 7 interviews and you've only got one because it's retained, and
yeah,
that's valid,
yeah.
and that's valid. So yeah, it's an interesting one. I think the first thing for me when it comes to this space and doing retained is the quality of the client that you're representing. Is there something unique about, the business that you're working with or potentially going to do something retain with? Are they
Right.
unique? Are they going to turn people's heads? What is different about them compared to everywhere else on the market? And is there really a compelling reason as to why people should join them? And indeed, if you put people in front of them, are they going to come away wowed, and impressed? So I suppose that's the first thing. It comes down to like, the quality of the business. So we turn, it sounds a bit, doesn't sounds a bit not very humble either, but we turn a lot of business away, even retained if it doesn't align. And yeah, I think that's an important one to consider, who you're going to be working with. And we
Mm,
go around collecting retainers every day if you wanted to, but there's that, the quality of the business. B, obviously based on that, I suppose, do you really want to be on the hook,
mm,
with a business if you don't genuinely think that you're going to be able to convert,
mm,
with them?
mm,
So there's that. I suppose, in our space, it is 50-50 on how much retained work you should do if it's a straight up billing role. And it's, people who are going to be just coming in, building a desk or, whatever, because quite often that is going to be a sideways move for people. So that won't mean that, I mean, if you're approaching a senior or principal consultant and you're suggesting another senior or principal consultant role, you're not going to move someone who's deliriously happy, who's billing really well.
mm,
There has to be a problem. They have to be disengaged. There has to be some pain
mm,
in order for them to move,
mm,
certainly sideways. Um, if at the senior level, at leadership level, obviously it's a little bit different because if you're, working with a business and they're looking to plug a gap of a manager or director and it's taken over a team of 10. Well, you could look at people that are already managing teams of 20. You could look at people that are managing teams of 5. You could look at maybe who's probably someone who's maybe coming from a different market. There's a different and there's a different way of positioning it rather than, okay, you're just going to be doing this billing role and it's just going to be
Mm.
doing 360 or whatever it is,
Mm.
the same as what you're doing. So I know I've not really
Mm.
answered your question. It
No, you
depends.
have.
Well, I suppose it
Mm.
depends on, the role level. It depends on
Mm.
the quality of the business.
Mm.
Um, I mean, of
I
course, it depends. Yeah.
I've
Go
always
on.
quite liked the combination. You mentioned that you want to consider how much retained work you want to do.
Yeah.
I've always quite liked the combination of, um, and I did it when I dabbled in rec to rec in between different things, of working on retained projects with committed clients that had an attractive proposition. I agree completely
Mm.
with you, and working with the really good candidates and introducing those candidates speculatively, because I found that both of those activities kind of fed each other.
Yeah.
Is that
Which,
is that an approach you use too, or
yeah, we do, to be
yeah,
fair. I mean, as mentioned before, we sell retained when I think the situation needs it.
yeah,
When the situation needs it, and obviously, of course, when it's something whereby we're confident we can work
mm,
really collaboratively with the client, we
mm,
think that that is genuinely the best solution. That's when
yeah,
we'll sell it.
yes, music
Yeah.
to my ears, James.
Uh, Now, it doesn't mean that every situation,
No,
demands it. It may
yeah,
well mean that, you know what, we've already got a lot of retained
yeah,
work on. We can't take any more because if we're going to do the proper job of it, then we need to, run the process properly. And you can only run so many at once. So we have to be mindful of how much we take on. And in that situation, we might sell exclusive and see how we get on with it, but we won't do a full deck and all
mm,
that kind of stuff. And the full sort of search process. But yeah, it's probably 50-50 in truth,
yeah,
with
yeah, yeah,
regards to
makes
like
sense.
contingent versus retained, because of course we get I mean, we've got it at the moment. We've got a client, a UK firm, looking to launch out here. We've got a couple of people who can bounce into it straight away based on network. We don't need to necessarily run a full search.
No, yeah,
We've got a
yeah,
couple of
lovely.
people we can bounce in, and then obviously we get people who come our way, referral, whatever, who are maybe more at billing level. And whilst we wouldn't work on a role at
Mm,
consultant level or whatever, we will place people if they come our way because our clients are looking for them.
mm,
So in which case we will go out and get them 3 or 4 interviews at different places or
yeah.
whatever. In terms of the spine of our business, in terms of what our sort of market position is and what we sort of focus on, it's leadership level, and that could well be a mix of retained and exclusive. But
Nice.
we're just careful with where we
Yeah,
sell it
great.
and push
Perfect.
for it.
I love it.
Is
I
that
love
is
it.
that
I love it.
4 years
Yeah,
on?
no.
Is that sort of have
Yeah,
I
I
put that on
mean, you have all that language. I'm like, oh, yes, he's taken that on board. Like, yeah, I love that. I really like the way that you've adapted, it to you and to fit you and your business and importantly your market, because
yeah,
that's what it's about, isn't it? You look to pick up a model or to utilize a model that you know is going to suit you and then flex it to fit, you and over time it just feels good. It sounds great. I
yeah.
can't tell you the number of rec that approach me that say, I want to do retain, but it'll never work. And I'm like, oh my God. Oh my God, like how many people do I need to put you in touch with to convince you that it will? Not that it's not, you don't have to go, oh, I'm never
It's
doing
all
contingent again, it's all going to be retained, all that. I'm not an advocate of that. And I say it all the time, like just exactly as you said there, you have to diagnose whether it's the right solution to apply, whether it's right for you, whether it's right for the client, and then apply it accordingly and apply a proper process when you've got the capacity to do it and when you've got the right relationship with the client and commitment to be able to do that. So, yeah, I
yeah,
love it. I'm delighted,
yeah.
and it's not surprising that you're A, booked up and busy every time I try and send you some business, and B, that you're hiring people. I'm like, for God's sake, tell them I sent you, and they said no. He still said no.
Yeah, there was the chap in
Who was
Chicago,
that? I can't remember.
wasn't it? Yeah,
Yeah, so I send a
yeah.
couple of people your way, and then they always come back. He's too busy. God, I need to
Well,
get some
also as
brownie
well,
points with James.
it depends. It depends on market. Are we genuinely in that
Yeah.
market? And we, we're not going to like flex too much because that's what
No.
a lot of other sort of rec to rec firms they do a bit of anything anywhere, and that's not
Mm.
what we do. You
Okay.
know, if anything, we're too far spread as we are. So we are actually going to separate. Like the new guy we've got is doing financial services, Billy does technology and life sciences. Although we're going to separate life
Practice
science.
areas.
Yeah,
Practice
exactly.
areas. Nice.
Yeah. So we
Do
have
you
our
do much search to search, or is it mainly rec to rec?
no, so that's a good question. So that's an area that we are going to go into, but we
Mm.
know we don't.
Interesting.
And we essentially, I suppose, work the mid-market contingent firms who do
Mm.
retained,
Mm.
as opposed to, proper search firms,
Mm.
for want of a better
Yeah.
phrase.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's a whole new world, and it
It
absolutely is.
is.
'Cause I've
Yeah.
never really done much in it. I mean,
Mm.
I've only just got my head around recently, what the different levels mean, partner.
Associates and partners, and yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's just an area that I've never done any work, but we are.
Mm.
I mean, there's a few areas that we want to get deeper in 2026 and beyond, and life sciences is one, financial
Mm.
services, got a guy doing, energy is another, and search to search is another. So we
Oh,
just need
great.
someone ideally who's got some experience of that,
Mm.
market probably. So yeah, I
Mm.
know there's big fees available, and of course, shouldn't be too hard selling retain to retain firms, should it?
Well, you'd think that, but one of the Rec that did our program, probably around the same time as you, was the same. It was all recruitment to recruitment, and he wanted, no, he was doing recruitment to search, but he was operating and search to search, but operating a contingent model and couldn't
Oh,
sell
really?
retained into the search firms. I mean, now he is, so he did the course, but now, of course, it's all retained. But he just wasn't confident enough because he didn't really know what the process was supposed to look like, and was kind of too
Right.
embarrassed to ask his clients, what it should look like. So once he knew what
That's
it
an
was, it's
interesting
fine.
one. You think you're
Yeah,
being judged?
yeah,
Yeah.
totally, yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Like you're a bit under a microscope when you're providing the service into the firm that is a specialist in providing that service, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Mind you,
but
I sound surprised. I shouldn't be. Recruitment businesses and recruitment business owners are the most like double standard people you'll
skeptical.
probably ever
Yeah,
meet.
hypocritical. Yeah,
Yeah.
completely. Yeah, well, I'm happy to give you some little tidbits of advice on that if you want some on the search to search.
Yeah.
Yeah, happy to. One thing I do want to know, I wanted to ask
Yeah.
you, have you noticed shifts or changes in demands in terms of types of recruiters that your clients are looking for? Contingent, retained, or niche, or coming from certain backgrounds? What do you notice in this
Um,
market?
I mean, touch wood, have we don't see a real issue with the market really, and I think you
Not
have
an
actually
issue,
have to
but like a shift. Do you notice kind of
shift.
changes? Yeah.
Not massively. I suppose, yeah, the big shift, a few years ago, post-COVID and all the rest of it was, and obviously when the market dipped, was the fact that, of course, at leadership level, which is where we, position
Mm,
ourselves, a lot of people that were operational and essentially doing a non-billing role were obviously squeezed. A lot of teams were cut.
mm,
People's roles were a lot smaller than what they may have been a year or 2 years previously. So, people were starting to come onto the market at that level quite a lot. Even if they had been doing some billing and whatever,
yeah.
they were being looked at as, okay, you're a really expensive billing manager now, so we're probably gonna,
Yeah. Yeah.
put
They're
you
quite
off.
vulnerable in that position, actually, aren't you?
Yeah, so it's like, okay, I'm pretty
Mm,
exposed here. So a lot of people were either moving on, or they were like, okay, if I'm gonna have to rebuild the team, do I need to do it here, or should I just maybe jump ship and maybe
mm.
pick up a team? But of course, there wasn't as many roles around, so I suppose there was a bit of a shift, or there was a bit of a shift then.
And do you
Um,
see demand for people with retained experience at all? Do you see that increase?
not
No.
Not massively, in truth. No, not
Mm.
massively. Not in the client base that we work. I can't
Mainly
say that we have many
contingent.
client. Yeah, I can't say that we have many clients saying, "Okay, mind you, that's a lie." We've just had a client, funnily enough, on retainer, that Billy's working. That is a contingent firm that does quite a lot of retained, and they want someone to be head of exec search. I
Mm,
would say that's probably the first role
mm.
we've worked where we're actually approaching the exec search market.
Right. They
But
want someone to
Billy's actually
build
on,
a retained
yeah,
practice. Yeah.
and they want a specific practice
Mm.
focused on that. Billy's just started it this week. So yeah, there's the first one actually.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
But
Okay.
apart from that, I can't say. And
Not
if
yet.
people probably like asked us in the past, oh, we want someone specific retained, we'd have probably said, oh, I don't know, it's not quite our thing. Just
Mm,
based on, like I say, us working the more, contingent mid-market
mm,
firms, essentially do a bit of retained, that's
yeah,
so.
which is the main market in the US. I think that's
Yeah.
the biggest market is mid market contingent, doing a little bit of retain, like taking a bit of money up front here and there, or
Mm.
packaging up a few roles. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what do people look for? So as you said, it's a very candidate driven market, and it is, I think, in most regions. I can't think of an exception that Rec isn't candidate driven. It's important, isn't it, that you say the client's proposition is attractive, is appealing, that people want to go and work for them. What is it they're
Yeah.
looking for? What is it they want? What is attractive to recruiters at the moment?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think when it comes to what makes a business attractive, I mean, performance level,
Mm,
look, if you want to hire A players, you want to hire high performers, you need to be high performance yourself, I
mm,
think.
mm,
If you're a low performance business with bad churn, don't expect to hire any A players anytime soon. So I think that's probably the first point.
mm,
What's your performance level?
mm,
What's your productivity per head? What's the strength of leadership? You
mm,
know, we hear a lot about, well, I say hear a lot about every single recruitment business under the sun says generally they're going to sell and they're going to do some sort of transaction. How realistic is that? Have
mm.
the leadership been on that journey before? Have they got a blueprint on how to do it? How networked are they in that PE world or in that space?
Nice.
So I think that's something important to consider because that's the
Mm,
equity piece is something that gets sort of banded around a lot. So that's an important one to consider. Do they have a go-to-market strategy which is unique? Market
mm,
positioning. Um, yeah, is there something genuinely different about the
mm,
business with regards to what they're doing? Have they got great advisors? Have they got, great trade, all this kind of stuff. So I suppose it's maybe a mix of that, but bottom line is
mm,
you want a business that's ideally got, really strong retention, high performance level, strong leadership, probably moving towards some sort of transaction with a proven model of doing it. Good go-to-market strategy in really exciting markets that are
mm.
maybe under-brokered. I think that's
Nice.
probably
Yeah, that's really nice. That's
the
such good
way that
advice.
a good way to position it, I think.
And what do you think the rec to rec market in the US is going to look like in, several years' time? You say it's underdeveloped. It's there's obviously a huge opportunity there for you. What do you see it looking like? Where's it going?
I mean, there's obviously a huge market out here. I know that
Mm,
there's a lot of other firms that are kind of in our space, say in our space. I don't think anyone sort of does what we do, how we do it. But yeah, there's other people giving it a go, I
mm.
suppose. But they're doing it generally speaking, they're doing it from afar. They're doing it from the UK
Yeah,
or
right.
whatever. I understand why the UK market is obviously saturated. It's tough.
Mm,
It's lower margin. It's lower salary, fee level lower, all that kind of stuff. That said, back there, they're not as networked. It's US hours, as all that kind of stuff.
mm, hmm
Not many sort of, say, right, okay, we're going to do it and we're going to put our money on the table and move out there. You don't,
mm.
there's a handful of people that are doing it, yeah, out here.
There's probably
But there
still
is
plenty to go around though.
well, there is, yeah. I mean, and
Mm,
there's only a handful. I think they're pretty small, and they do all the markets. Some are doing junior level, some are mid-market level, or whatever. So, in terms of, I mean, obviously, we support the staffing industry essentially, and the staffing industry isn't going anywhere. I think in the US,
mm,
everyone in terms of globally, the opportunities in the US now, I think it's pretty. I think from what I'm told, Europe is a much tougher market now than what it used to be. UK is obviously just the UK. I'm not sure about. I believe Japan. You probably know better more than me on this, but I believe Japan is an
insane.
amazing market. But you have to
Insane.
really know what you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they don't use LinkedIn for a start, so where do you go?
I quite like
How do you
that
find people?
actually.
Yeah, that's one of the big differences. And nobody moves, so it's jobs for life. So that's another fucking
Right.
major difference. So that's a complete game changer. And so for that reason, fees are like 44%. The
Wow.
standard average fee for a recruitment agency in Japan is 40%. But then how do you find people and how do you move people when there's no LinkedIn and people don't move? Like it's really, really difficult. It's really
Don't speak
difficult.
the lingo.
And
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of people don't speak English. So there's another one. You've got to learn Japanese. You've got to figure out how to find people with no LinkedIn. You've got to move people that have got a job for life and you've got to speak a language that you don't know. So I think there's quite high barriers to entry. But yeah, no, I work with quite
Market,
a
but
few.
yeah, hard to get into.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah. I do work with a few Japanese firms, and the ones that have got it right are killing it.
Yeah.
Absolutely killing it. Yeah, but it
Yeah, I
isn't
bet.
easy. So,
Yeah, yeah, I've heard
um,
that. Apart from that, yeah, I think it's the
apart from
US.
that, yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
tell me about uh, any sort of projects or wins or work that you've done that has highlighted the power of working on a retained basis. Why
Mm.
why does it matter? Why does it make a difference
Yeah.
to what happens?
I think the way that we apply it is there's a big difference between people. If you've got a key role that you need to hire somebody into, there's a big difference between hiring someone for that role who basically whoever happens to be looking at the time,
Mm,
who's active versus the absolute best in class in the market.
mm,
There's a big difference between those two options. In one, a search process has to be applied, which is, of course, turning the heads of the best in the market. And you can only do that by putting the time in up front loading the work, doing the discovery work and everything else, and then essentially applying a deposit-led solution
mm,
to it. The best in market, sorry, whoever happens to be looking, it's just a time. I mean, how long do you wait for that? If there's a timeline, it's a strategic hire, and there's opportunity cost attached to not having someone in seat by a certain date or whatever it is, then it's a game of chance. If
mm,
you
yeah.
just wait for someone just to land in your inbox with, because it's out there with several people contingently that aren't really working the role actively, So, it,
Hot marks.
yeah, is that all right? I feel like I'm being tested here.
For anyone considering moving their rec to rec business to retain, wherever they might be, what advice would you give them?
I'd say look at your clients,
Mm,
look at your client base. I mean, you've got to, I've always thought, when I was at S3 many years ago, one thing I was really good at selling was a trial start. I don't even know if it's called that anymore. I don't know if that's a phrase that you used to use, but a trial start, which is basically selling in someone on a working interview, but getting someone in, forget the interviews. We'll just send somebody down, I'll come back to you later in the day. We'll discuss three profiles. We'll get someone down there on a working interview and you can assess how they are on the job versus how good they are at interview. And if you like them, just keep it rolling from there. And I mean, this was 20 odd years ago when I used to sell them, but I believed in it. I believed in it in terms of I thought that it would be, a good solution, but I believed in it because it was better for me. Um, you know, so
yeah.
but with the retained thing, first of all, you've got to believe in the fact that it's the right solution, not
Mm,
just what's best for you. You've got to believe in the fact that it's the best solution for your client. But then equally, you should think, okay, am I okay with refusing other work to focus on this? And
mm,
is there going to be cost associated with that? So you need to obviously weigh that up yourself and
mm,
whether or not you're aligned with the right sort of businesses.
mm,
Um, I think what you were saying before, a mix is healthy.
mm, mm,
Going all in on retain, I think for any business, I think regardless of sector, I think is a high risk strategy, to be honest,
mm,
and you'll probably end
mm,
up billing less than what you're doing at the moment. So
mm,
you need to be very mindful of the mix being healthy and not refusing other work and only taking on what you can genuinely think
mm.
you can, manage. And
Yeah.
indeed, you've got a really good chance of filling. You want to apply I mean, there's no point in, I mean, we talked about it before. If you've got candidates ready to go and you don't need to apply a search process, then don't do one. Just get some good terms and bounce them in and get it done. You don't want to hook yourself up to this, VCs all
Yeah.
the time and all this kind of stuff if you don't need to.
Yeah.
So I think it just depends, on looking at your client base, looking at how much work realistically you could take on, would you be happy with only selling one solution? If you was able to really embed yourself with one business and work a lot more closely and collaboratively. But it doesn't work for everyone, so you just got to make that decision on, what clients you feel that you'd be able to best align yourself with and to work on that sort of basis.
I love it. Um, is there anything you've touched on a few things and learnings and with hiring and then pivoting not just location but the model of the business. Is there anything that you wish you'd known earlier in your journey?
Yeah. Yeah, I think really looking at the values thing with
Mm,
regards to kind of like right, let's get our foundation right with regards to the kind of people and the why and get the ask
purpose.
a lot
Mm,
before we hired Billy. I spent a lot of time, which is mad really when you think about it, but it was so important that I put so much time into the vision, what someone was going to be joining. It's not just joining James Ward and we'll see how it goes. It was like there's a vision, there's a strategy, there's a go-to-market strategy, there's values, there's all and I had it all on
purpose.
it. Got it all
Mm,
on no, we've got it all
yeah.
sort of everywhere. And when Billy joined, he was like, Jesus Christ, I've never seen anything like this. And it's like it's a really small business. So I suppose getting that right earlier,
Mm,
maybe
mm,
would if I'd have got that clear when I was in the UK before I came to the US,
mm,
that would have saved me a lot of time and
mm.
aggro, and would have been a bit further along now. But then
I
equally,
think things
you
happen
go
at the
have some
right
pain.
time. Would you have been ready and receptive to that?
Probably not. I
I
mean, I
think I
think
might
I.
have mentioned that it would be a good idea at that time, and I think
Yeah.
you had other things on your plate. Yeah, so I'm a
All
massive
right.
believer. Yeah, I'm a massive believer that I asked you the question, so it's a silly question really because what we say, what we know now, really is what we should know now, and there's loads of things that we could do with knowing now that we don't yet know, and in 5 years' time we're then going to know them and go, fucking hell, I wish I knew that 5 years ago. We've still got that, and the journey hasn't finished, has it? So
No.
it's not a great question for me to ask. I think your journeys happen in everybody's journey just happens in exactly the right way, in the right time, because that's what makes us who we are. And you've now learnt those lessons and you know why that's important. And if you hadn't, you wouldn't know how important it was. And it's meant that you've embedded this foundation and culture that will be infinitely more valuable because you've done that and more important to
Yeah.
the people, that are there. And the important thing is that you've done it and you've learned. And I love your growth mindset. You're so receptive to learning, and I love that you're continuously improving and developing not just yourself and your business, but the environment for those around you and those that are on the journey with you.
I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
immensely impressed.
I appreciate that. Thanks very much. But yeah, it's I think what you've said there hits the nail on the head really. It's like I think you just got to go through some pain.
Yeah,
You've got to make some mistakes and for yourself. So I knew about all. I kind of played around with some stuff before,
yeah,
before I started hiring the first couple of people. And like I say, it wasn't like, I hired 15 people and had to get rid of them all and had
no,
to. It wasn't that. I mean, I hired one consultant. It wasn't a big deal. You know what I mean? But it was
yeah.
enough pain for me to. It was expensive enough for me to, like, okay, I need to really
I
rethink
really got
this.
to do this. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean,
I need
we're
to be.
recruiters. We're always looking for shortcuts. Like, can I get away with not doing it? Maybe. Yeah, just do it. And then you're like, oh, fucking hell, I'm going to have to actually do it. I was
Yeah,
exactly the same. I used to think values and vision. I'm like, what a load of bullshit. Who needs that? It's just a load of mumbo jumbo. It's a load of kind of corporate speak. And then I was the
it's
same.
true.
I realized that we were really lacking in we didn't have a business plan. We didn't have like a solid, like, what's our 10-year, 5-year, 3-year, 1 year, what's our purpose, what's our values. Like, we don't need that. We just work really hard and, good things will happen. And I
Hmm.
realized that, yeah, that was only going to get me so far. And I had to do the same. I had to put an operating model in and put a business plan in and if I'd known that earlier, I'd like to think that, okay, it would have taken me further quicker, but actually I wasn't really receptive to it because I did know that, like you, at the back of my mind. I knew that that was the thing that people did. I just thought it was a load of bollocks and I could get away with not doing it. So,
Well, I read, what first got me on it was I read a couple of books. I read Principles by Ray Dalio, and I read
uh,
No Rules Rules by Reed Hastings about the growth of Netflix and everything. And both of those really like resonated with me with regards to values and
mm,
principles and all that principles of business and all that kind of stuff. They really resonated. So I was already sort of on that road, but I hadn't sort of quite gone all in on it
mm,
and
mm,
uh, really sort of worked on it. And like I say, a little, but then, yeah, like I said, experienced a little bit of pain and it kind of like, right, okay, I
yeah.
haven't got any time to fuck about here. I need to, I need to really do this now before we spend any more money. So yeah, I'm glad I did. But if anything, I'm glad, I wish I would have done it sooner. But
Yeah.
someone else said to me as well. I got asked a while ago, what would you have done differently? And I think, I probably would have came out here with two or three people, like
Yeah.
already from the UK.
Mm.
I think,
Because both the people you've hired, you mentioned before, are British, and
yeah, yeah,
yeah, it
yeah,
must
they're
be. It's
both
harder to find them
same
once you're
region.
there than it would have been to bring them with you.
Yeah, that would have
Yeah.
been easier. It would have been easier to, again, if we had the sort of the vision clear and, and everything else, and would have had a couple of people if it had a couple of people in the UK, got them aligned, got them all sort, and then we came out here two or three
Yeah.
handed, we probably could have,
Made an impact quicker. Mm.
yeah, but again, shoulda, woulda, coulda. It
Should
was,
have, would have, could have. I was just going to say that.
yeah, it was,
Yeah.
I didn't. So,
Yeah.
that's that. But again, looking back, I think it's a good idea to try and, I suppose, any businesses that are going to come to the US, there's always this sort of debate on whether or not you should hire people who are on the ground, who are
Mm.
sort of, and of course, we help businesses do that. We hire, presidents and all the rest of it. So, it might sound counterintuitive in terms of what I'm saying, but I think coming out here with a team
Yeah.
is that have maybe been working in the US for a little while and
Mm.
really bought into the company vision and all that kind of stuff is probably a good way to do it.
Mm.
So I
You've got a
kind of wish I had done
nucleus.
that. You
Mm.
say again?
Well, you've got a sort of critical mass and you've got a bit of a nucleus to build
Yeah,
on and some momentum already
yeah,
with a shared purpose that
yeah.
is you're
Shared
not trying
purpose.
to attract something to people to very little.
Yeah,
There's more
yeah,
substance, isn't there?
100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, maybe
That's a
that.
good
Yeah.
answer. Great answer. What's next for you, James?
What's next? Yeah, I touched on it earlier with regards to the markets that we want to penetrate and go a bit further into. So, yeah, I mean, we're on our journey now, really, in terms of sort of growth and whatnot. So, we're interviewing somebody else at the moment, or interviewing other people, should I say, at the moment. So, the next person that we hire likely will be someone within life sciences or life sciences R2R, of course. So, we're not going to be the big thing with us is we're not going to be the biggest firm in the world, but what I do want is to do our thing is more with less. So higher revenue per head, we want to hire true A players, high performance culture, again underpinned with the right values. And like on a per head basis, we want to be able to. I made an analogy recently, which sounds a bit cheesy, but it's almost like a race car, but you would dissect every bit of the race car and you make every little bit excellent. That's what we're looking to do. So we're dissecting every bit of our operating model and making it truly excellent. So we want to keep doing that and get to a point where, like I say, our revenue per head is off the chart. So we want to build a business where basically everybody bills over $1 million a head. That's where we want to be. We want everyone to, financially gain out of it, and yeah, that's what we want. So yeah, in terms of where we're going, short term, hire possibly one more person this year, and ideally four next year. But we're not going to be the biggest business in the world. But in terms of leveraging tech, in terms of making all our processes excellent, I want us to be pound for pound the best. But yeah, not
Nice.
necessarily the biggest. I don't believe in growth for growth's sake. I
No.
just, I prefer, the right people because I think you can have a better culture and a better performance and fundamentally a better time with a smaller group of the right people rather than a sea of average of people all doing different things.
I agree. I agree completely with everything that you've just said. It sounds awesome.
Yeah,
James,
that's
you've
it.
been fantastic. Thank you
Thanks so
so
much,
much for
Lee.
joining us today and sharing your journey and your vision and your purpose with us. I really, really appreciate it.
No, good stuff. Thanks so much.
Well, that's another episode of Retrain Search, the podcast in the bag. Thanks for listening to our wild tales, LinkedIn controversies, and our top tips on how to sell and deliver retained search. Get involved in our next episode. Send in your questions and share your experiences with us by emailing podcast@retrainedsearch.com. And don't be shy. Connect with us on LinkedIn and come and say hi. We don't bite. Unless you're a Shrek firm, that is. We want to say a special thank you to our retrained members for sharing what's working for them right now and innovating new ways to grow and evolve. It's an incredible community. If you're wondering what exactly we mean when we mention our communities, well, we have two separate programs. Our Search Foundations program is for recruiters who want to learn how to sell and deliver retained search solutions consistently. And we have our Search Mastery program. That's for business leaders or owners already at 50% retained or more and looking to scale and grow and structure their search firm. We cap memberships to these programs to protect the integrity of the community. If you want access, just talk to us. Okay, thanks for listening. We'll be back very soon with another episode of Retrain Search, the podcast.